Today on the deep dive, we're looking at a methodology that is, well, let's just say it's audacious.
That's one word for it.
We're analyzing this hyper-focused, really high-stakes blueprint. It's called the 10-Day Roadmap to English Fluency.
And just the name itself is a huge claim. 10 days.
Exactly. The whole idea of making significant progress towards fluency in, 240 hours, it just flies in the face of everything we think we know about language learning.
It really does. It's asking for a complete paradigm shift in how you'd approach this. Traditional methods are all about breath, slow, and steady progress.
Right, the long game.
The long game. This source, though, it dictates a vertical sprint, a total all-in immersion strategy that is built on intensity, not on time.
So let's be really clear about our mission here today. We are not trying to validate the claim of achieving full fluency.
No, absolutely not. Our job is to deeply examine the process that the source lays out. If you, the listener, are trying to acquire a skill rapidly, what can we pull from these 6 demanding steps? What are the actionable insights here for high-velocity learning?
That's the key, because for you, someone who values efficiency, who wants to get thorough knowledge quickly, this source is kind of a shortcut to understanding the mechanics of accelerated learning itself. We know you're curious about the how.
And if you look at the core mandate, the overarching message, it's not a suggestion, it's really an operational requirement. It states, and I'm quoting here, significant progress is achievable by following these steps and maintaining consistency.
That word consistency, it seems to be the engine of the whole thing.
It is. You have to treat these 10 days like an immersive training exercise. If you fail to maintain that intensity for even a day, the whole system just kind of collapses.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The essence of it seems to be this relentless focus and, again, consistency. It's about building a closed-loop system.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it seems like the intense input you're taking in immediately feeds into some kind of targeted output. And that output, in turn, immediately triggers a precise correction. It's a constant cycle.
A feedback loop.
Exactly. So we're going to structure our deep dive today around these 6 critical steps laid out in what is basically a manual for speed learning.
Let's do it.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. The foundational requirements. If you're going to commit to a 10-day sprint like this, you just can't afford any wasted motion.
None at all.
You have to know exactly where you're going from hour 1, and you need to optimize your environment immediately. Which brings us to step 1. It's all about defining the destination, but with surgical precision.
That's a great way to put it.
The instruction is identify specific areas for improvement and set achievable milestones. And this is where, that standard goal-setting advice we all hear, it just smashes into the reality of this compressed timeline.
It really does. In a 10-day window, the need for specificity is just.
Oh.
It's exponential. You don't have the luxury of discovery. You can't wander. You need a laser focus from the very beginning.
So a general goal like, I want to be better at English, is completely useless here.
It's worse than useless. It's actually destructive.
How so?
Because it gives you nothing to measure your progress against on day 2 or day 3. Vague goals like, I want to have better conversations, or I want to understand grammar more. They don't have the metrics you need for immediate daily tracking. You have to replace that generalization with intense specificity.
So you're dissecting the skill.
You're dissecting it into tiny, measurable, actionable little components.
Okay, so for you, the listener, who's maybe thinking about trying this, how do you move from an abstract idea like grammar improvement into the kind of detail this source seems to demand? What does a truly specific 10-day goal even look like?
It looks like an assignment, not an aspiration.
An assignment, I like that.
Yeah. So for example, let's say your weakness is using past tenses. Your goal isn't just understand the past tense. No. It should be something like, by the end of day 3, I will be able to construct 10 complex sentences using the present perfect continuous.
Okay, very specific.
And 10 more using the past perfect, and I'll be able to do it while maintaining the correct word order and using the right auxiliary verbs. See, you're basically creating a custom-made mini curriculum just for you based on your exact deficiencies.
Right, so the goal is no longer just this desired outcome in the distance, it becomes an actionable checklist.
A task list. And it can be highly practical, tailored to your own life.
What would be an example for, say, a professional?
For a professional, it might be purely functional. Something like, by the end of this sprint, I will successfully read and summarize a 5-page technical white paper from my industry in under 15 minutes.
Wow.
And I'll be able to identify every single vocabulary term I didn't know.
Or, if you're more of a social learner, it could be. By day 5, I will participate in a 30-minute video call with a native speaker, and during that call, I will use 3 complex sentence structures and 5 new idioms I've learned, and I'll do it without hesitating. That level of detail changes everything. It directly impacts the kind of media you choose, the articles you read, and, crucially, the specific speaking partners you'll need to find for those 10 days.
Yes, you immediately eliminate any study material that isn't hyper-relevant to that one measurable objective.
And that's where the efficiency comes from.
Exactly. This goal-setting step is, in essence, a triage operation. You're identifying and prioritizing your most critical language wounds. But this level of specificity, it creates a new problem. How do you handle milestones? How can you possibly measure progress on something that's supposed to take months?
The source mentions achievable milestones. In a sprint like this, achievable has to mean something you can do within hours, not weeks.
That's it. Milestones in a 10-day plan have to be compressed down to daily or maybe even bi-daily check-ins. If your entire race is 10 days long, you have to know what progress looks like at the end of day 1, day 3, day 6, day 9.
Can we stick with that present perfect tense example?
Sure. So your day 1 milestone might be as simple as identifying every single instance of the present perfect in a 500-word news article. That's it.
Okay, achievable.
Then your day 2 milestone is producing 5 accurate sentences of your own using that tense. It's incremental.
Which puts this immense pressure on testing yourself and getting immediate feedback. I can't wait a week for a tutor to check my work. I need a test built right into the goal itself.
You absolutely do. And this is how it impacts all the other steps. If your day 1 goal is, say, phonetic practice from step 3, and you don't hit that milestone, then all the immersion and speaking you do on day 2 will be built on a shaky, uncorrected foundation.
So the specificity of the goal is like a high-resolution compass. It stops you from wasting energy.
It prevents energy diffusion. And these goals aren't just motivational posters on the wall. They are the feedback mechanism. They create these demonstrable micro-successes that compound every single day.
And if I fail my day 3 milestone?
Then you know exactly which part of your practice you need to adjust, right then, probably within the same hour. There's also a psychological benefit here that the source points to.
Which is?
When you're facing this huge, daunting 10-day target, you're not motivated by the finish line. You're motivated by achieving these small, specific, daily wins. It stops you from feeling completely overwhelmed.
Okay, so once that specific target is locked in, the source demands a total change of environment. This is step 2. Create the language bubble. The instruction is surround yourself with English through media, conversations, and practice. And this doesn't sound like just having the TV on in the background. This sounds like a total sensory lockdown.
It is. It's a cognitive pressure cooker, and that's exactly the intention.
So what's the mechanism behind that? Why does it have to be so extreme?
The source is leveraging a neurological principle, input saturation. By absolutely maximizing your exposure to English and, just as importantly, minimizing your access to your native language for those 10 days, you're forcing your brain into a state where its old habits just don't work.
What do you mean?
I mean that internal translation. Thinking in your native language and then translating to English, it becomes too slow, too cumbersome. The brain just doesn't have a choice. It has to start accelerating the assimilation process, building direct links between concepts and the new English words.
But hold on, I have to challenge that a little. A total sensory lockdown.
Yeah.
Isn't that just mentally unsustainable? How do you make sure the learner doesn't just completely burn out by day 4? The intensity sounds extreme.
That is the single greatest risk. And the source seems to address it, at least implicitly, through what it calls the 3 pillars of immersion: media, conversations, and practice.
So it's not just one thing.
Right. The key is active variety, not just constant monotonous stress. Burnout happens when a task is both repetitive and frustrating. By cycling through these 3 different pillars, the intensity stays high, but the cognitive task itself changes. And that provides these small, structured moments of, let's call it, mental relief.
Okay, let's break down those pillars. First up, media. When the source says media, what does active engagement actually look like in a 10-day sprint?
It means every single piece of media you consume is treated like a resource, not a distraction. If you watch a 20-minute news clip, you might end up spending 40 minutes on it.
Ow.
You're using English subtitles. You're pausing constantly to dissect the complex phrase you just heard. You're rewinding to mimic a challenging intonation pattern right after you hear it. You're writing down new high-utility phrases that you can use later. You were treating it like a language laboratory.
So definitely no binging a new series with your native language subtitles on. This is active parsing and analysis.
Absolutely. Then you have the second pillar, which is conversations.
Okay.
Now, this is your raw input environment. This is the spontaneous, unpredictable nature of real-time communication. This is where your brain is forced to rapidly process different speeds of speech, slang, sudden shifts in context, nonverbal cues.
So this is the constant pressure of the bubble. It's just demanding your attention in real time.
It is. And it's important to see how this is different from the other pillars. The conversation pillar is really focused on input and reception. It's about training your listening skills to understand others in a spontaneous setting.
And then finally, the third pillar is practice.
Right. And this implies the deliberate, structured use of the language. This is where you focus on your output, specifically targeting the weaknesses you identified back in step 1.
So this is my dedicated homework time.
Exactly. This could be writing exercises based on vocabulary you just picked up from the media you watched. It could be translating short texts, or doing targeted drills like repeating those present perfect tense sentences 10 times, or writing a short email using that specific structure. It's your time to produce language under controlled, lower stress conditions.
So you're reinforcing the motor skills before you have to deploy them in a high-stakes, real-time conversation.
You're building the muscle memory. And when you put all three together, your environment becomes the curriculum. The learner has to commit to living, breathing, and thinking in English for this entire period. The total isolation is what forces that accelerated assimilation.
The commitment has to be absolute then.
It has to be. If you allow yourself these little cognitive escape hatches, scrolling social media in your native language or planning your day or even your internal monologue, you immediately lower the stress level that's necessary for this kind of rapid forced adaptation. The 10-day sprint really only works if that environment is fully 100% saturated.
Okay, so we've built the foundation, we've got clear, measurable goals, and we've created this total immersion environment. Now, the source moves on to the technical skills, the actual tools you need to speak effectively.
Yeah, nuts and bolts.
Exactly. And step 3 is fascinating to me because it tackles something that so many beginner courses just gloss over: the music of the language.
Yes, mastering the music.
The core instruction here is focus on sounds and intonation, and use techniques like shadowing to mimic native speakers. And that distinction between the individual sounds and the overall melody, that's often the bottleneck, isn't it? It's what separates someone who's competent from someone who sounds truly fluent.
It's the difference between speaking correctly and speaking naturally. And that's vital, not just for perceived fluency, but more importantly, for simply being understood without making the listener work so hard. We have to think about two distinct layers here: phones and prosody.
Okay, let's start with the discrete sounds, the phonemes. These are the smallest units that can change a word's meaning. The classic example is the L and R confusion for some learners, or maybe the difference between ship and sheep.
Right. And if your production of these individual sounds is consistently off, you're placing a really heavy cognitive load on your listener. You're forcing them to constantly decipher your meaning. So this demands immediate, targeted practice on the specific sounds that might not exist in your native language.
And in a 10-day plan, you can't wait. If you wait to master this, every single word you speak is just reinforcing a bad habit.
Precisely. And then there's the other layer: intonation, the prosody,
The music.
the music, the stress, the rhythm, the pitch patterns, all the things that convey emotion and intent and even grammatical structure.
It's the difference between he left and he left.
Exactly. The rise in pitch at the end turns a statement into a question. Intonation is basically the organizational chart of a sentence. If you have perfect vocabulary but flat, robotic intonation, your speech sounds hesitant. It's difficult for a native speaker to follow the conversational contour, and the whole exchange slows down. True fluency means mastering that acoustic packaging.
So focusing on this early, right at the start of the 10 days, is critical to correcting those ingrained habits before they, fossilize.
That concept of error fossilization is the whole reason for this high-intensity approach. In a rapid learning sprint, you simply cannot afford to internalize bad habits. You want to establish the correct motor habits, the physical movements of your mouth, your tongue, your throat, from the very first hour you start speaking.
And the source prescribes a very specific technique for this, one that kind of bypasses the conscious mind. It's called shadowing.
Yes.
So let's define that as the source means it. This isn't just repeating a sentence after you hear it. This is synchronous. It's overlapping with the speaker in real time.
Imagine you're an echo, but a very, very close echo. You're listening to an authentic, high-quality native speaker, maybe a fast-paced news report or a documentary, and you're trying to reproduce everything. The sound, the rhythm, the pace, the stress, the intonation, all of it simultaneously, or maybe just a syllable behind.
You're trying to wear their acoustic mask.
That's the perfect description.
Yeah.
You're trying to wear their mask.
Well, what are the key benefits of this really intense, real-time physical mimicry, especially for a compressed 10-day goal?
Well, there are three big ones. First, it builds muscle memory. The mouth and tongue are muscles, and they need physical training to handle the specific biomechanics of English sounds.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, it creates a direct, very rapid neural link between what you hear and what you say, your auditory input and your motor output. You stop having to consciously think, okay, how do I make that this sound? And your mouth just does it. It bypasses that slow internal translation.
And the third?
Third, shadowing forces you to maintain a natural rhythm and pace, which is a huge part of fluency, the ability to keep the conversation moving without these long, awkward halts.
The source also says to mimic native speakers, which implies something about the source material itself. You can't use simplified learner dialogues for this.
No, you can't. You have to use high-quality, authentic, challenging material. You're trying to calibrate your own systems to the actual target velocity of the language. So when you get into those real conversations in step 5, you're not just accurate, you're also operating much closer to the natural speed and flow.
Okay, which brings us to step 4. We've worked on the music, now we need the words. The source gives a very efficient instruction here. Learn common expressions and phrases to enhance your conversational skills.
Right, and notice it says expressions and phrases, not just words.
Exactly. It suggests that just having a high word count is less important than having conversational utility.
This is the efficiency hack. This is how you simulate high fluency very quickly. It's built on the idea that we don't speak in individual words that we assemble on the fly. We speak in chunks of language. Focusing on this phrasal vocabulary is the absolute shortest route to sounding natural.
So why is that? Why prioritize expressions and phrases over just learning isolated words, especially on such an aggressive timeline?
Because when you learn a chunk of language, you're getting an immediate, grammatically robust tool. Think about it. If I learn the individual words I am looking forward to and this, I still have to figure out the correct order and grammar.
Right, there's a lot of processing there.
A lot. But if I just learn the whole chunk, I'm really looking forward to this, I have acquired a fully formed high-frequency structure that I can use correctly, immediately, in a real conversation. It completely bypasses the need for that real-time grammatical construction.
It's like you're stocking your toolkit with prefabricated parts instead of raw materials.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
You're building with ready-made architecture for social interaction.
So if you're the learner in this sprint, what kinds of phrases should you be prioritizing? What are the categories?
For rapid utility, the source implies you'd prioritize about 4 main categories. First, what you could call social lubrication phrases.
Okay, like what?
These are the phrases that manage the flow of a conversation. Greetings, transitions, ways to agree, things like, that's a great point, or if I can just jump in here, or I see where you're coming from. They let you maintain the pace of the conversation without long pauses.
So they keep things moving. What's the second category?
Second would be transactional and utilitarian phrases. These are for practical, real-world tasks, and they often link directly back to the specific goals you set in step 1. So phrases for ordering food, or seeking clarification like, could you run that by me one more time, or giving simple instructions.
Okay, practical stuff. Makes sense.
Third, and this is a big one, disagreement and mitigation phrases. To be fluent, you can't just agree with everything. You have to be able to politely disagree or express nuance. So instead of a blunt, no, you're wrong, you learn to say, I respectfully disagree, or I tend to see it a bit differently.
It shows social competence, which is a big part of how people perceive fluency.
It is. And the fourth category would be phrases for hesitation and buying time. No fluent speaker is a robot. Everyone needs a moment to think. So you learn to use phrases like, well, that's a tough question, or give me a second to gather my thoughts.
And learning those stops you from just defaulting to, or even worse, trying to think in your native language.
Exactly. This whole targeted approach supports the rapid pace of the 10-day plan. because it's all about maximum conversational return for minimum learning effort. It ensures that when you get to step 5 and you have to start speaking every day, you have these ready-to-use structures that sound authentic.
And that probably masks some of the underlying grammatical weaknesses you haven't totally fixed yet.
It does. It prioritizes flow and the sound of naturalness over having encyclopedic knowledge. And that in itself is a massive confidence boost because you start sounding better, faster. Fluency is often about perception. These phrases create the perception of competence very, very quickly.
All right, so we've built the scaffolding and we've gathered the tools. Now we get to the activation phase. This is the practical, demanding output of all that knowledge.
This is where the theory hits the road.
It's where the theoretical sprint becomes a physical marathon. Step 5 is so simple in its instruction, but it's just extreme in its requirement. Engage in conversations with native speakers or language exchange partners to practice speaking.
And the key word there, the most important operational detail in the entire roadmap, is daily.
Daily speaking. And I'd argue high-volume daily speaking.
It has to be. During an intense learning period like this, the decay rate for new knowledge is incredibly high, especially for the motor skills involved in speaking. If you learn 20 new phrases on a Tuesday, but you don't actually try to use them until Friday,
They're gone.
the neural pathways just start to atrophy. So that motor skill practice is paramount. You have to force your brain to retrieve the phrase, activate the correct pronunciation muscles, and build the sentence, all under the pressure of a real-time conversation.
And this demand for high output has to just dominate your schedule for those 10 days.
It has to be the single biggest chunk of your time.
Yeah.
We're not talking about a quick 5-minute chat a day. The source implies we're talking about structured interaction for maybe 3 to 4 hours, spread throughout the day.
3 to 4 hours a day.
Yes, that's the level of intensity we're talking about.
Wow. Okay, so that's the core of this whole thing, really. Let's stay on this for a bit. How does a learner even achieve that kind of volume? That's a huge logistical challenge.
It is, and it requires a strategic mix. You can't just do one 4-hour marathon conversation. It has to be a mix of high-intensity, short bursts, and then some longer, more sustained exchanges.
Can you give me an example of what a day might look like?
Sure. A learner might schedule, say, a 30-minute one-on-one intensive session with a paid native speaker tutor first thing in the morning. That's where you'd focus on the very specific goals you identified back in step 1.
So that's the targeted high-intensity part.
Exactly. Then, maybe in the afternoon, you use a couple different language exchange apps for 2 separate 45-minute conversations with peers. That's a lower-stakes environment where you can just practice deploying your new phrasal vocabulary.
And you're getting variety in partners, too. Different accents, different speeds.
Crucially. And then you could finish the day with something as simple as a 15-minute reflective recording. You just talk to yourself, recording your thoughts about the day, focusing purely on your own flow and intonation without the pressure of a partner.
That's a really good idea. But let's go back to the partners. The source is very specific. Native speakers or language exchange partners. Why is that mandatory? Why can't I just use an app or rely on my structured lessons?
Because you need the unpredictability factor. Structured repetition is necessary, but it is not sufficient for rapid progress. A real native speaker will talk at a natural pace, they'll use idioms you've never heard, and they'll force you to adapt immediately when the conversation goes off script.
So you're forced to negotiate meaning. That's a core competency of fluency.
It is. The goal here is stress exposure. You need to be in a situation where if you mishear something or if you use a phrase incorrectly, you get a genuine, confused reaction from the other person.
And that forces you to rethink your strategy on the spot.
On the spot. It rapidly strengthens that input-output neural link. The more you are forced to adapt under that kind of pressure, the faster your brain automates the process. This pressure cooker effect is what generates the assimilation you need for a 10-day goal.
So this daily, high-volume, high-stakes output, it's just completely non-negotiable.
It's the engine. Think of it this way. Step 2 gave you the environment. Steps 3 and 4 gave you the ammunition. Step 5 is the intense daily firing range where every single shot counts.
And without that high volume, your brain will just default back to your native language when things get tough.
It will. It undermines the whole immersion bubble you work so hard to create. The high output demand forces you to stay in the target language. It's physical training for your mind and for your mouth. The volume is designed to create linguistic fatigue, to push you past the point of easy articulation and force your brain to rely on those new motor memories instead of slow, conscious analysis.
You're training your mouth muscles until they can operate automatically?
That's the goal.
Okay, now this next part is what I think elevates this whole plan from just a crazy sprint into a highly optimized system. Step 6 is separate from step 5.
A critical distinction.
The instruction is get feedback on your pronunciation, vocabulary, and fluency to improve further.
Right. So step 5 is just general conversation. It's using the language. Step 6 is the structured review. It's the quality check phase where you analyze your performance.
This is what ensures that all that high-volume output isn't just reinforcing bad habits over and over again.
Exactly. It is the difference between just practicing and actually improving.
For me, the most powerful thing here is the specificity of the feedback requested. It's like a diagnostic scan. The source says to get targeted critiques on 3 specific areas: pronunciation, vocabulary, and fluency. Why isolate just those 3?
Because by isolating those 3 core elements, the sound, the word choice, and the flow, you can prioritize rapid course correction without getting overwhelmed by some vague general critique like, your English isn't good.
And that specific feedback feeds directly back into the earlier steps. It keeps the system a closed, effective loop.
A highly effective loop.
So let's break down those 3 areas. First, pronunciation. This takes us right back to step 3, the sounds and the music of the language. The feedback has to be precise.
It has to be. A native speaker doesn't just say, your pronunciation is messy.
No.
A good feedback partner says, when you use the verb to read, your past tense pronunciation sounds exactly like the present tense, and that's creating ambiguity.
Oh.
Or you're placing the stress on the wrong syllable in words that end with apposition. Now that gives the learner an immediate, specific, fixable exercise for their next shadowing session.
Okay, then the second area for feedback, vocabulary. This isn't just about using words correctly, is it? It's about using the most appropriate high-utility phrases from step 4.
Exactly. The feedback loop here analyzes the utility and the naturalness of your lexical choices. If you used a very formal, awkward construction when a simple, common expression would have been better, the native speaker can give you that high-utility replacement. It accelerates the refinement of your conversational tone.
So you start sounding less like a textbook and more like a real person.
Precisely. And finally, the third area, fluency. This is about the flow, the pace, the smoothness, the ability to speak without long pauses or excessive hesitation.
It's a measure of automaticity.
It is. The native speaker is assessing the overall auditory experience of talking to you. Are you halting? Are you speaking too slowly? Are you using too many filler sounds? The feedback can diagnose the problem. Maybe you need more input saturation from step 2, or more prefabricated chunks from step 4.
Or the opposite, maybe.
Or the opposite. If you're speaking way too fast and making a lot of errors because you're rushing, the feedback is to consciously slow down and prioritize accuracy from step 3.
The ultimate goal here is to prevent that fossilization of errors we talked about. If I just practice for 10 days straight without this targeted feedback, I could just be cementing a bad habit that will take me months to unlearn later.
This step ensures that every single day, your baseline performance improves. Error identification and swift correction is the absolute hallmark of accelerated learning.
And the feedback loop needs to be almost instantaneous.
It does. Ideally, step 6 happens right after step 5. You have your conversation, and then you immediately have your feedback session while all the mistakes are still fresh in your mind.
So we've broken down all 6 steps. It's a highly aggressive, highly structured methodology. Let's look at the source's conclusion, which really summarizes the mindset you need. It says, by following these steps and maintaining consistency, you can make significant progress towards speaking English fluently in just 10 days.
And you can see how it's a perfectly designed closed loop, but one that demands that high commitment. Your goals inform your immersion. Your immersion primes you for the tools, pronunciation, and vocabulary. The tools are deployed in daily speaking, and the daily speaking is constantly refined by structured feedback.
And consistency is the fuel for it all.
It's the non-negotiable fuel. If you skip a day, you don't just lose momentum. You're allowing those newly formed neural pathways to start decaying before they've had a chance to solidify.
And the final line really emphasizes the psychological reward, which seems so crucial for managing this level of intensity. Remember, every small effort you put in each day will build your confidence and bring you closer to fluency.
Right. Confidence isn't presented as something you need to start with. It's framed as a direct, tangible result of following the method and seeing that you're making measurable progress every single day.
That is the ultimate synthesis, isn't it? In language learning, that fear of sounding awkward or being wrong, that lack of confidence is often a bigger barrier than a lack of knowledge.
Absolutely. Hesitation kills your output volume, which just reinforces that feeling of inadequacy. But by setting those measurable daily milestones in step 1 and then getting that immediate corrective feedback in step 6, you get tangible proof that you're actually getting better.
So it transforms this huge, intimidating goal of fluency into a series of 10 highly structured, winnable daily battles.
It does, and the confidence you get from winning those little micro battles is what allows you to maintain the insane consistency required to finish the sprint. The system is engineered to generate confidence through demonstrable progress. It's a really efficient cycle.
Yes.
Success breeds confidence, confidence ensures consistency, and consistency guarantees more success.
So that was a deep dive into an extremely ambitious roadmap, one that demands just a radical commitment from you, the learner. Let's quickly recap the 6 high-intensity components of this 10-day sprint.
Let's do it.
You start by setting clear, surgically precise, and measurable goals. Then you have to create a total immersion environment, that language bubble, to force your brain to adapt.
From there, you focus your technical refinement on pronunciation and shadowing to build the correct motor habits, and you acquire phrasal vocabulary for immediate conversational utility.
And finally, you activate all that knowledge through high-volume, mandatory daily speaking, and you refine it constantly with targeted, structured feedback from a native speaker.
You know, what's really fascinating here is that while the 10-day time frame is incredibly aggressive, maybe even unrealistic for total mastery, the underlying methodology is completely sound for maximizing learning velocity in almost any skill.
It's a highly optimized system.
It is high input saturation coupled with immediate high output demands, and then a rapid structured correction loop to prevent the fossilization of errors. It's not a magic spell, it's just extreme efficiency applied relentlessly.
It demands that you treat skill acquisition like a full-time, high-priority project, and that you understand that those rapid gains come at the cost of immense, temporary effort.
Indeed. And it leaves us with one final provocative thought. If you were to commit to this kind of methodology, setting clear daily goals, demanding high-volume practice, and getting immediate, structured feedback, what other complex, seemingly daunting skills or professional knowledge sets might you be able to accelerate significantly, not just in 10 days, but maybe in a hyper-focused 30-day period?
Something for you to mull over as you start your own deep dive into rapid skill acquisition and performance optimization. We'll see you next time.